So we start with North Melbourne up against Sydney at Marvel Stadium. Saturday night was set up for a massive contest. However, it was the Swans who ran away in the second half, put on a massive score against North Melbourne and won in the end by 65 points. 52 to North Melbourne, 117 to Sydney. The Swans started really well all around the ground, but especially with their midfielders. They won at clearance and got the ball forward as Sydney kicked the first 3 goals of the game. However, the Kangas slowly started to get ascendancy around the middle of the ground and eventually put it onto the scoreboard with 2 of their own. But Sydney finished well with the last 2 goals of the opening term to take a 21-point lead into quarter time. And North Melbourne started well in the second term. They got the first 2 goals of it, but the Swans eventually responded with 2 of their own. Both teams traded goals late, and at halftime, Sydney would hold a 22-point lead. However, in the third quarter, it was all Sydney. In honesty, it looked like men against boys. The Swans dominated at clearance and locked the ball in their forward half. Sydney kicked 6 goals in a row to take the lead to 58 points, and even though the Roos finally responded late, at 3/4 time, Sydney held a 59-point advantage. And in the final term, it was much of the same. The Swans just continued on their merry way, and North Melbourne just couldn't get anywhere near the contest. Only a couple of North Melbourne players played a decent final quarter. The Swans, absolutely brilliant today, and in the end won by 65 points. Now, first of all, North Melbourne, this is incredibly disappointing. I think the fans are over a couple of positives from a game. I think they're sick of that statement, and there weren't a lot of positives from this game. They were set to maybe make an upset tonight, and they got smashed by Sydney in the second half. It was a real down performance. A lot of North Melbourne fans would have been going into this game thinking they could potentially win it, and to them to come out and get smashed by over 10 goals is a very bad performance, and Alistair Clarkson needs to ring in some changes next week to find some players who actually want to play for the jumper. On Sydney, this has been their best performance of the season. Great job from the Swans. They go into next week against Collingwood in some red-hot form. Dean Cox seems to have got to them in their bye week, started to get their game plan that they've needed, and really good job from Sydney to come out today and have a good performance. So let's get to the stats. Multiple goal kicks for North. Parker with the 2, along with Larkey and Curtis. For Sydney, Amati and Hayward both with 4. Hanley and Chad Warner with the 2. On the disposals, Harry Sheezel with the 34, Parker with the 27, Daniel and Davies Uniac with 25, and McKercher with the 22 for Sydney. Bice with the 26, Lloyd with the 24, 20 to Grundy, Rowbottom and Roberts. And finally, on the AFL fantasy scoring, Harry Sheezel top for the Roos with the 125, Parker 113, Davies Uniac 99, Powell 92, Daniel 88. And for Sydney, Bice top for the Swans with the 125, Lloyd 114, Hayward 95, Florent 91, and Rowbottom with the 86. But before we get into that, we have to mention the members vote for round 3. How the members vote works for you guys. For the review in 2025, a 3-2-1 voting system is awarded for every single game of the AFL season on the channel. And each round, players who receive 3 votes in the game have a chance to get a bonus vote. I will decide the 4 best players from the round, who will enter a poll exclusive for channel members to vote on, and the winner of that poll will receive the bonus vote for the round, the members vote. And at the end of the 2025 AFL season, every vote counts. So this is your chance to have your say on the 3rd ever Boundary Riders medalist. So if that appeals to you, or if you just want to show some extra support on the channel, then make sure to click the channel membership link down below and join in the fun. But for now, let's get back into the video. And the members vote for round 3 went to the Gold Coast Suns, Matt Rao. So let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes, Riley Bice, 2 votes, Will Hayward, and the 1 vote to Tom McCartan. I cannot believe that Riley Bice has been playing in the VFL for years. 24 years of age, finally gets his chance in the AFL level. And what a performance he had today. Over 25 touches, 15 marks. He had 7 score involvements, 400 metres gained, 9 intercept possessions. I could go on and on. Had 2 goal assists as well. This guy was playing for Werribee last year and now has a best on ground performance at AFL level. This shows that there are players in the lower leagues who can perform at AFL level, and a great job from Riley Bice. Deserves a lot of praise on his performance tonight. Will Hayward with the 2 votes, kicked the 4 goals when the game was there to be won. He was brilliant tonight, had the most amount of score involvements for Sydney. And Tom McCartan, he was amazing down back against Nick Larkey, kept him goalless for the first 3.5 quarters. Larkey got a couple of goals late, but the game was done at that point. Tom McCartan, he belongs as a defender, and he was really good tonight. Next, we get to the game on Saturday evening. Not really a massive spectacle, but the Tigers fought it out to the end. But of course, the Lions ran out winners by 28 points. 118 to the Lions, 90 to the Richmond Football Club. Now, as you would expect, the Lions were a class above the young Tigers throughout the entire day, but the Tigers showed some decent signs. The Lions dominated field position, but the Tigers' defence stood up relatively well in the opening term. Now, the Tigers were able to kick 2 late goals to reduce the margin from 22 points to 10 points at quarter time, and the Lions did pile on 4 goals in the early stages of the second term, but the Tigers responded. And they did that throughout the majority of the day. Now, I'm going to gloss over a lot of the rest of the game because, as you would expect, the Brisbane Lions were just a class above. They were a lot better side. But the Tigers showed some decent signs. Players like Armstrong, Lawler, Trainer, Banks, Tresize all showed why they're either high draft picks or have some talent that Adamuse can work with. And to Richmond's credit, they're able to stay with the Lions the entire day and win the final term. Brisbane took the foot off the gas in that final quarter, making some sloppy mistakes, and in the end, like I mentioned, Brisbane did win by 28 points. If you're a Tigers fan, you are excited about what is to come, in my opinion. The young kids showed great work. Lawler had his best game. He should get the Rising Star nomination this week. Armstrong took some really good marks up against a really good defender, and I think they can get a couple of wins this year, the Tigers. I think some teams are going to take the Tigers lightly, and I think they will be able to win some games. On Brisbane, look, there's no worries here. I know some people will say, oh, they dropped off against Richmond. There's some danger signs around. Look, this game was already in the books, basically, when they walked into the MCG. So Brisbane don't have too many concerns. They go next week against the Bulldogs and gather around. It's going to be a very interesting contest, but in the end, good signs from Richmond going into the rest of the season. Now, moving to the statistics of this game, multiple goal kickers for the Tigers. They had 5 of them. Armstrong, Lawler, Banks, Campbell, and Green all with the 2. For the Brisbane Lions, Cameron with the 3, Bailey with the 3, Morris, McCluggage, and Will Ashcroft with the 2. On the disposals front for the Tigers, 32 to Hopper, 29 to Taranto, 25 to Short, Lawler with a 24, and Tresize with the 21. And for Brisbane, 42 to Lockie Neal, 30 to Dunkley, 26 McCluggage, 24 Will Ashcroft, 23 to Zorko. And finally, on the AFL fantasy front, Hopper with the 103, Taranto 102, Short 97, Lawler 95, and Curvis with the 91. And for Brisbane, 141 to McCluggage, 116 to Dunkley, 115 to Neal, 105 to Ashcroft, and 101 to Jasper Fletcher. But now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Hugh McCluggage, 2 votes went to Will Ashcroft, and the 1 vote went to Josh Dunkley. Really underrated player, I think, Hugh McCluggage. Kicked 2 goals today, 12 tackles as well. Probably isn't seen as a real tough midfielder, but he's really grown into his own at Brisbane, and he had a really good performance, hit the scoreboard as well. Same with Will Ashcroft, just loves the MCG, it seems. Great job from him. And Josh Dunkley, being one of the best players so far this year, could honestly be a smoky for the Brownlow medal. So to the first game on Saturday, it was game of the round. Gold Coast Suns up against the Adelaide Crows, and this game truly lived up to the hype. The game was on a knife's edge from start to finish, but it was the Suns who held on, keep their undefeated record intact, and won by 1 solitary point. 91 to the Gold Coast, 90 to the Adelaide Crows. Now, it was a great start from the Suns. They kicked 2 goals before the Crows could even blink, and the Suns' pressure was immense. Considering the weather was quite hot, the Suns were hot on the pressure early. Adelaide did well not only to survive the early dominance from the Gold Coast and survive a little bit of luck with the Suns kicking 3 goals, 5 in the opening term, with Phil Thorpe kicking a goal on the quarter-time siren. At the first break, the Suns only led by 7 points. But that goal from the Crows seemed to have actually breathed some new life into them. In the second term, they were absolutely dominant to start. The Crows kicked 3 goals early in the second quarter, which equated to 4 in a row either side of the quarter-time break to take the lead for the first time. But midway through the second term, the Suns worked their way back into it. They locked the ball in their forward half, but unfortunately couldn't put it on the scoreboard until late in the first half. With the Suns kicking 2 of the last 3 goals, it was the Crows who did lead by 1 solitary point at half-time. But the Suns were the better team coming out after the break. The Gold Coast piled on the first 3 goals of the quarter to take a game-high 18-point lead. However, the Crows quickly responded, and with the game opening up, they were able to take their chances to get 3 goals in quick succession to take the lead back. But the Suns ended the third term the better side, and at 3/4 time held a 1-goal lead. And with the Suns continuing on in the early parts of the final term to take an 18-point lead, it did seem that maybe the Gold Coast could break away. But the Crows, that they've done all day, were able to fight their way back. They kicked 2 goals in a row to get within 1 kick. It was an intense final 10 minutes of the game, with both teams having opportunities, but in the end the Crows were a little bit hard done by, and the Gold Coast were able to hold on to win by 1 point. So the Gold Coast undefeated, 3-0. They may look like the real deal this season. I don't know how far they're going to go, but right now they are in the box seat for a final spot in the early stages of the season. And on Adelaide, I have a few concerns about the fact that they didn't find many goals other than their 3 tools, but they lost no fans today. They were very, very good. But going into the statistics of this game, the multiple goal kickers for the Suns, Walter with the 3, King, Long, and Graham with the 2. For the Crows, Thilthorpe with the 5, Walker with the 4, and Fogarty with the 3. On the disposals, Rioli with the 26 along with Sam Flanders, Anderson and Miller with the 24, Noble with the 20. And for Adelaide, Dawson top for them with the 31, Hinge 27, Saligo 26, Peatling 24, 21 to Rankin. And then finally on the AFL fantasy front, 113 to Rioli, 103 to Flanders, 99 to Witts, 92 to Anderson, and 87 to Miller. And for the Crows, Jordan Dawson 118, Peatling 116, Thilthorpe 105, Cumming 97, and Saligo with the 92. But now let's get to the votes. 3 votes went to Riley Thilthorpe, 2 votes to Jared Witts, and the 1 vote to Dan Rioli. Now, Riley Thilthorpe was brilliant all game. He scored 5 goals, was good in the ruck when he had to go in there, and was just a thorn in the Suns' back all day. He almost took the game out of their hands in the end. It was a little bit hard done by maybe not to get a free kick in the forward pocket in the latter parts of the contest, but he has been one of the best players so far this season, and he's a player to watch for years to come. Jared Witts did really well in the ruck today. Definitely won the ruck battle over Riley O'Brien, and he's been a leader for such a long time. Even though he's not the captain anymore, he was brilliant. A little bit tough on the number 1 vote, but we did give it to Dan Rioli. He was brilliant in the final term, really stood up as that experienced player in that defensive 50 and had some big moments in that final term. So Friday night, we were down at Cardinia Park, Geelong up against Melbourne, and the Demons stayed with the Cats for the first 3 quarters, but eventually Geelong broke away, broke their spirits in the final term, and won by 39 points. 85 to Geelong, 46 to the Demons. Now, there was one injury concern from this game. It was Jack Henry. Had a hamstring issue in the second term and was subbed out pretty much straight away. Now, the Cats have been good at having players recover in record time in the past, but it does look like at this stage it's a 3 to 4 week hamstring injury, so just keep your eyes peeled for more information in the coming days. But get to the game itself, the Demons started really well with the opening goal of the game, but what was most evident was their stoppage work. Their midfielders were ready to respond after a bad few weeks. However, Melbourne's early pressure did drop off slightly, and this is when the Cats found it a lot easier to move the ball around the ground, which opened up avenues to goal. With Geelong kicking 3 goals in response, at the first break, the Cats led by 15 points. And in the early parts of the second term, Geelong piled on 2 more goals to make it 5 in a row. And at that point, it seemed like maybe the Demons were about to roll over. However, to Melbourne's credit, they did fight back. They finished with 3 of the last 4 goals in the second term, and at halftime saw themselves down by just 15 points once again. And when the Demons kicked the first goal of the second half to bring back the margin to just 10 points, hope started to rise for the Ds. But every time they got close, the Cats were able to find a goal to give themselves some breathing space. And again, at 3/4 time, that margin was just under that 3-goal threshold. But with a close contest, it did set up for an interesting final term. However, when Geelong kicked the first 2 goals of the quarter, the game was just too far out of reach for Melbourne. Not only did the Cats kick 4 goals in the last quarter, but were able to keep the Ds goalless and in the end won by 39 points. Now, to be honest, the Cats should have won this by a lot more. They were wayward in front of goal, but in my opinion, they just needed to get back on the winners list. I think that was the most important thing for Geelong in the end. But on the Demons' point of view, again, it's the same old issues coming up. Their forward line is just woeful right now. They can't find an avenue to goal, and it's one of the biggest problems in football. And the look on Petrarca's face at the end of the game, I think, said it all. He's frustrated at the club, and at the moment, I think they're in free fall. They can't find avenues to goal. Their midfield aren't performing consistently. Their issues has been up forward for a very long time, and they still haven't been able to find a way to fix it. They have Essendon next week in Gather Round, which I think is a gettable game, but right now I'm probably tipping the Bombers. I think it's very tough to tip Melbourne on the evidence that we've seen so far. But getting to the statistics of this game, the multiple goal kickers, Paddy Dangerfield, brilliant performance with the 3 goals, Stengel and Bowes with the 2, and the only multiple goal kicker for the Demons was Petrarca. On the disposal, Zach Guthrie had 30 touches, Bailey Smith to 28, 26 to Myers and Dempsey, 24 to Stewart, and for the Ds, Oliver with the 30, 27 to May, 22 to Pickett, 21 to Petrarca, and 20 to Bowie. And finally, for the AFL fantasy watchers out there, 149 from Zach Guthrie, 127 to Bailey Smith, Humphreys with the 115, 108 to Stewart, and 103 to Dempsey. And for Melbourne, May with the 106, Oliver with the 104, Gawn with the 95, McDonald with 88, and Pickett with the 87. But now let's get to the votes in this game. Now, my brother has given the votes for this one. He has gone 3 votes to Zach Guthrie, 2 votes to Paddy Dangerfield, and 1 vote to Bailey Smith. Now, he says Zach Guthrie was outstanding throughout the night with 7 intercept possessions, 8 score involvements from the back 50, 17 marks, which is absolutely insane. It was definitely a leader down back for them tonight. And he's a really underrated defender in the competition. I think Zach Guthrie is one of the best small defenders in the competition, and to have 17 marks in any game is brilliant. So great job from him. Paddy Dangerfield winded back the clock, 9 score involvements, had 3 clearances, but if he can stay up forward this year, I think Paddy Dangerfield could kick up to 50 goals. He is so dangerous up there. He's very hard to match up on. And I think if he can stay up forward for a lot of this season and in his future years, it can really prolong his career. So great work from Dangerfield. Probably had a couple of down weeks so far, but when they needed him most, he stood up. And finally, Bailey Smith just looks at home. Just shows that really he should have been playing in the midfield for a long time. So on Thursday night, we had Collingwood up against Carlton, traditional rivals, big fierce contest in front of a massive crowd at the MCG. Carlton had a very good first half, but as they've done all season so far, they capitulated, and in the second half, Collingwood ran over the top of them, and in the end won by 17 points. Collingwood 63, Carlton 46. Now there was one injury concern from this game. It was Lockie Cowan. He injured his hamstring in the opening term, and he was ruled out pretty soon after that point. Very disappointing for the Blues, as their defense has probably been their best line this year, despite losing all of their games. I don't think it's been much of their fault. But getting to the game itself, it was a tough opening term with both teams being strong over the footy, and the pressure was immense from both clubs. However, it was the Blues who took the early ascendancy in this game with the first 2 goals of the match, before the Pies responded with 3 of their own to take the lead. However, a late Carlton goal saw them take a quarter-time lead of 3 points. It became a grind in the second term, with neither side being able to trouble the scorers, but Collingwood did have their chances. Midway through the quarter, the Pies locked it in their forward half, but unfortunately couldn't convert, with 5 behinds for the term, and when Carlton were given the opportunity, they converted. It was the only goal of the quarter, but it did mean the Blues would lead at half-time by 5 points. And despite a good showing from Carlton in the first half, it was the same old story in the second half. The Blues dropped off massively, and Collingwood were there to capitalise. The Magpies piled on 4 goals, 6 in the third term, to just 1 behind in reply, and Collingwood headed into the 3-quarter time huddle with a 25-point lead to their name. And at that point, the game was done. Carlton did win the final term, but it meant nothing, as Collingwood would secure a 17-point win and go to 3-1 on the ladder. I did actually say this to my brother during the live stream that we did on the channel, that this game felt like an absolute smashing. The final margin of only 17 points truly doesn't give this game the justice that it deserves. The Pies were way too good, and Carlton's second half was terrible, especially that third term. If Collingwood kicked straight in this game, this deserved to be a 40, 50 plus point win for the Pies. But Carlton were deplorable in that second half, and they deserved to be smashed. But in the end, what Collingwood did best in that third quarter was they were able to suffocate Carlton, just keeping them inside their forward half, and Carlton's game plan just turned to nothing. They continued to bomb long and high and just couldn't get outside of their defensive half, and Collingwood just continued to pile on the pressure, and eventually it came onto the scoreboard. But let's get to the statistics of this game. Multiple goal kickers for Collingwood. Lockie Schultz with the 2 goals, along with Jordan De Goey. For the Blues, George Hewitt and Hollands with the 2 goals. On the disposals, Josh Dacos top for the Pies with the 31, Pendlebury 29, Nick Dacos 27, Sidebottom 24, and Houston with the 23. And for the Blues, Walsh 31, Akers 30, Hewitt 29, Doherty 27, and Sard with the 24. And then finally, for the AFL fantasy watchers out there, Cameron with a whopping 126, Schultz 107, Pendlebury 100, Josh Dacos 99, Perryman 95. And for the Blues, top of the game was Sam Walsh with the 137, Doherty 111, Hewitt 109, Chera 105, and Akers with the 104. But let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Darcy Cameron, 2 votes went to Scott Pendlebury, and the 1 vote went to Lockie Schultz. Now, I know Lockie Schultz won the medal in this game, but me and my brother both thought when the game was there to be won in that third term, Darcy Cameron really stood up. He had a good 50-50 battle with Tom DeConing for the majority of the night, but especially in that second half, Darcy Cameron really took the ascendancy in the ruck contest, gave his midfielders first use, and he was brilliant tonight. So me and my brother both thought that he was probably going to be getting the medal. But nonetheless, Scotty Pendlebury I thought was second best on the ground. Me and my brother were talking about who gets the 3 and the 2. We decided to go with Darcy Cameron 3, but Scotty Pendlebury, age does not weary him. Just racked them up for fun. His disposal was good, as it always is. And I mean, I said in the commentary as well that I think that he could be making 450 games. He does not look like slowing down. And Lockie Schultz, don't take anything away from him. I thought he had a very good night. 2 goals, 18 touches from a small forward is brilliant. So good response from him after last year being very well down as a recruit. And seems to be coming into his career at Collingwood. But guys, make sure to join us tomorrow as we continue the review for this round. But that is all from me, so we'll catch you all next time.